guys, hope you're all well. I've just got back from the MOT station. I've actually borrowed a friend's bike to sort of do this video, although we sort of didn't film the process of the bike going through. I'd done it more to answer a few questions. Obviously messing about with bikes, custom bikes and such, I do get quite a few people ask me questions here and there about getting their custom bikes for MOTs and what you can and can't get away with and stuff. So I thought I would ask the guys who own the MOT station where I take my bikes if we could do a bit of a do's and don'ts and things like that sort of video. So yeah, they agreed to it. So I guess a lot of you guys already know the ins and outs and what you can and can't get away with. I guess some of you guys have got sort of good MOT testers that maybe turn a blind eye to the odd thing, and I guess some of you have got MOT testers that throw their weight about, if you know what I mean. So I thought I'd do this and it'll maybe help some of you guys and answer some of the questions I get, and next time you go for an MOT, it like I say, it could help your bike sell through. So maybe there's, you know, we can twist the rules a little bit to get our bikes through and do the odd things so they pass, and touch on a few things where it will fail miserably, if you know what I mean. So yeah, that's what this video is about. It may help some of you, it may not. Anyway, here we go. As you can see, we've at Lutterworth MOT Centre. You've probably seen this place before on the videos. So we're back to answer some questions that get asked quite a lot with custom bikes. So to start with, before you even bring your bike here, what do you recommend?
Does it start? That's such a critical aspect of it. We have that a lot. Someone book an MOT in, 5 minutes for the test slot, they're on the phone, battery's flat. It's run out of fuel. Tyres are flat. So a bit of basic preparation, a couple of days beforehand, is ideal. Can you actually make it to your appointment? It's basic stuff, but you know, some people can overlook it.
Yeah, so you don't miss your slot sort of thing.
Oh yeah, don't miss your slot.
Like you said, you get people that ring up and just don't come.
Yeah, this does happen, and it is very annoying, by the way.
Because the bike don't start.
Yeah.
So, next on this then, I'm going to ask a few questions that I've seen tons of times all over the internet. Number plate, size, where it's mounted, colour, and obviously there's a thing about what years you can have that black and silver plate and things like this. I will start, that shouldn't be on this bike to start with. But
yes.
You come armed with the proper one.
Here's one I made earlier.
Yeah, you come armed with that and stick it on, and he's not allowed to pull it off.
So that is another good point. If you know your plate isn't going to meet, or you suspect it isn't, and you've got the original, bring it. And even if you can't fix it on, depending on your testing station, your tester is going to be more than happy to help you fit it. So, you know, help yourselves out. You know what the requirements are broadly. That isn't going to work for this age of bike. Whereas this one is absolutely perfect. Now, the other critical issue here is that you'll note there's no rear reflector, but we'll get into that shortly.
Yeah.
In terms of number plate location, there isn't really much guidance. A sensible position means, can you read it? Can a police officer read it while he's behind you? And unfortunately, can an ANPR camera read it? That's what they're broadly looking for. So there's no official guidance, but you know, it's got to be legible.
Yeah.
And that's about it, really.
And can you reach it with your foot to cover it up? You go for the speed
You put your hand on it as you go, cover it with your t-shirt.
So that's basically it for number plates then, really.
I mean, there is some year-related stuff for number plates. Like, for example, this is a 91 bike or thereabouts. Yeah. This 2-line setup is what this bike needs. Now, an older bike, you can have a 3-line setup, but for this bike, it has got to be this, and this number plate meets all the criteria. Now, there is some criteria regarding measurement of lettering and gap around the edge.
And spacing, isn't it?
And spacing. However, in true DVSA style, your MOT tester isn't obliged to get the tape measure out and measure it. So, you know, as long as it looks sensible and is legible, you're going to be all right, hopefully.
Yeah. Right. Exhaust pipes.
Noise levels.
Again, there's no direct requirement for noise levels. We do not have a decibelometer. So we can't measure noise output. The manual states that a bike shouldn't be any noisier than a machine of average age, build and construction. The only way you're going to prove that is if you have 5 or 6 bikes of the same age, build and construction outside running, and if one's noticeably noisier, you might be able to have it. In the real world, that's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, we see a lot of Harleys, KTMs, stuff like that are just noisy. From my point of view, I might issue an advisory, exhaust noisy.
If it's ridiculous.
If it's ridiculous. I mean, the issues you're more likely to have are with road usage regs, so that's the police might get involved, and actually the biggest issue you might have is with your neighbour. I am neither of those. I'm not your neighbour and I'm not the police, so
Yeah.
you know, that's where that is.
Rolling slightly back to the number plate again. Foreign bikes with no plate that you want to get registered.
Okay, so that's an unregistered bike. You do not need to present that bike with a number plate on the back, because as it's unregistered, the first port of call is to get an MOT test, which is your evidence of roadworthiness, which you then submit that paperwork to the DVLA and they will issue you with a number plate. All you'll get on the MOT paperwork is number plate not displayed, or something along those lines.
Does it, obviously, I guess it's got to have a frame number for that.
You've got to be able to identify it, or we've got to be able to identify it, so yeah, it needs a frame number on it, but if it's unregistered, then the likelihood is we'll be creating a new field, so it'll have a new MOT identity attached to it. As far as that's concerned, we need as much information as possible, so if it's got a logbook or an importation documentation, bring it along, and we can fill all the appropriate fields in on the MOT to make sure that bike goes out of here, right colour, right make, right CC, etc, etc. But as far as getting the test done, we can test without a number plate being displayed. But that's only as far as non-registered bikes, foreign bikes, or bikes with diplomatic immunity, if you can believe such a thing. But that's about it. So there are ways to get around it.
Right, I think one of the biggest questions, front mudguard.
Front mudguard. No, don't need one unless it forms some structure within the forks.
As in fork brace.
Yeah, so if you take the front mudguard off and the front forks start moving around, it needs a front mudguard.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's no requirement to have one.
Right, but if it's got one, it's got to be secure and safe.
Yeah, I think broadly, I mean, if I was testing a bike, front mudguard on, if it's going to come off and cause a hazard to other road users or the rider yourself, I might want to look into it more closely. But again, the lead in the manual is a little bit ambiguous as far as that's concerned. If you bring in a bike and the front mudguard's all rusty and it looks like it's going to fall off, have a look at it. If it's not structural that you can see, do feel free to take it off. If there is any problems, then we will let you know. But the guidance is pretty wishy-washy from the manual. But like I say, if it's structural, it needs one. If it's not, it doesn't.
Right, let's bounce off the front mudguard and go to the chain guard.
Very similar. If there's a chain guard fitted, we will need to inspect it, and if it's insecure or looks like it's going to come off and be dangerous to either the machine, the rider, or a passerby, then we can fail it. If it hasn't got a chain guard, like this machine, then it's not testable, we won't mention it. I think if you've got a custom bike and you've routed the chain in such a way, or there's a part of the bike which means I'm likely to catch my leg on the chain and hurt myself, I might look into it more closely. But as far as the manual's concerned, if it's fitted, we will test it. If it's not fitted, we won't.
Right, next question to pick your brains. Lights, brake lights, rear lights, front lights, side lights, indicators.
Right, okay, we'll start with the indicators because this bike falls into a trap. There's no requirement or guidance in the manual currently that dictates where indicators have got to be. Basically what it says is that the indicators have got to be either side of the centre line of the bike, or the centre axis. So it's middle of the wheel, vertical, either side. However, there is a minimum spacing. Now on the rears, my glamorous assistant will demonstrate, they are within. The minimum gap for the rear indicators, 180 millimetres. The front's 240. Now, unfortunately, on this machine, the guy who's built it has
Not me, by the way.
has put the indicators either side of the headlamp at the top. I don't know if you can see.
We'll have a look at that.
We'll have a look at that in a minute.
So this is why now I go for bar end indicators. So there's no issue with spacing.
The real issue here with indicators is, as a rider, you want to be seen. To put them behind the headlamp like that, you run the very real risk of them being lost in the headlamp. If you're out at dusk or at night time or whatever, you're not going to be seen indicating. You know, we all know what can happen there if someone doesn't see you, especially car drivers. I mean, you know, you really are at risk. So whilst there's no direct advice as to where they go, you know, diameter-wise, there is for minimum requirement, and at the front they don't pass. That is a fail.
Yeah.
But like we say, if you've got some end-bar drop-off lamps or something like that, perfect. The more visible you are to road users, the better you are. But from an MOT point of view, like I say, the minimum requirement for the rear is 180 millimetres, and the front is 240.
I wonder if there's a grey area there, because a lot of people put these bar end indicators in because they're visible from the front and the rear. So you can see them from both ends.
Realistically, if I'm stood behind the bike 6 feet away or whatever, and I can obviously see the indicators are working with the rider on the machine, because you might have a big guy on it who's wide-shouldered. If I can see around him and I can see what's going on, you know, if I'm a fellow road user and I come up behind this machine and I know what it's doing, then if there's no direct advice in the manual regarding that, I'll apply common sense and say, look, I can see that, I know what it's doing, that's not going to surprise me on the open road, it's going to get a pass. I might make up an advisory just to cover my own arse, because, you know, the advisory is the MOT tester's best friend. Yeah. So, you know, don't be surprised if you get some sort of wishy-washy advisory in the absence of actual, you know, factual evidence throughout the manual. But, you know, I think that'd be a sensible.
Some of it doesn't go into real clear detail, does it?
No, I mean, the manual is...
So that's when you can twist the rules.
It's subjective to the experience of the tester, how much common sense the tester's got, and trying to make an informed decision based on what the manual is telling you. Now, the other thing to mention about the manual before we get too involved is a live document. So it changes constantly. I mean, some of the stuff we talk about here, there's a strong possibility that by tomorrow, it's out of date.
Which you experienced earlier with a car, or the other week.
Yeah, LED headlights on vehicles, they're now age-related. So there's been a change already in the last couple of months. LED headlights were a fail on a classic car. Then it came back in, and it's now a pass, age-related. So it's something that has changed very recently. I think we're starting to see them being fitted to motorbikes as well. So you might find this year, you might fit an LED headlight to your bike. By next year, it might suddenly be a fail. So just
at the moment, it's a pass.
Yeah.
So LED headlights on a bike is a pass.
Yeah.
If you change the whole unit.
Yeah.
Well, it's not even, I think the manual talks about a light source. So it defines a light source as, well, the only way to define it, a source of light, and in which the manual states that LEDs are included in that. So at the moment, LEDs are okay for motorbikes. That could change. The critical thing with LEDs is beam image, which we'll perhaps touch on shortly, but as long as it's got a good beam image, if you're not dazzling anyone, then it's within the realms of what's laid out for your headlamp, which is also a critical thing to talk about, because the headlamp, the beam image requirement for each headlamp is different depending on the headlamp. So you might have an American headlamp, a European headlamp, or a late 60s headlamp. When you come in for test, the MOT tester should be able to identify that and apply the test accordingly. But the basic rule of thumb is, has it got a reasonable beam image? Are you dazzling anyone? So if it's got a good beam image, great. If it doesn't look like you're going to be dazzling anyone, even better.
Daytime MOTs.
Daytime MOTs. Okay, traditionally, daytime MOT we'd only ever used to see on motocrossers and things like that. People want to go green laning and they're able to ride to it, or they've got an event where the bike has got to have an MOT on it so they can take part in the event. So daytime only MOT is exactly that. If you've got any equipment on there that aids you riding at night, it can't be on there, get rid of it. And by get rid of it, I mean permanently disconnect or mask or paint or cover in some capacity so it's permanent. So say, for example, if you turn up with this and it's got a bit of sellotape on it that's half hanging off, that's not good enough. Either remove it altogether or put some really good robust masking tape on it, do the whole lamp if you want, or paint over it. you know, there can be no argument as to whether that can be used at night time. So it's got to be disabled, basically.
So basically, this includes brake light as well?
Brake light, reflector.
So daytime MOT is literally, you don't have to have any illumination whatsoever.
That's right.
Indicators, brake lights, side lights, for nothing.
Yeah. So any equipment that is designed to aid you riding at night time, no good. Can't have it.
It's got to come off or be covered up properly.
Yeah. So the other aspect of the daytime MOT certificate, at the moment there's no specific paperwork for it. You'll get a standard MOT pass, but there will be an advisory stating this machine is going to be ridden in the day, in daylight hours. So if you get caught riding it at night time, PLOD will be able to see that, and then they will apply various road usage regs to you, or infringements thereof, plus, you know, basically riding a machine with a known defect. So you're riding out of hours, effectively.
That's another sort of area of everything, really, isn't it? You know, it may pass an MOT, but the road law may be different. Yeah. Like your front mudguards and road chain guards. The road law may be different. To your
road
MOT.
usage regs, as MOT testers, we have no idea what any of them are, and we don't want to know because
your job,
you know, we've got to test impartially, so we can't use prior knowledge. So, you know, but road usage regs will include exhaust noise, lamp configuration.
Your chain guards.
Chain guards possibly, but at the moment I'm just sort of saying what you might be at risk of. So what happens in here, you may go out with that legally binding document, but it may not get you out of trouble. You may still be open to some attention from the law.
The strong arm of the law.
Strong arm of the law. The other thing to point out with that as well while we're on it is a bike or a car can come out of here with a list of advisories and a pass on it. Doesn't mean to say that that bike is going to be roadworthy outside the time of the test. So, you know, be aware of that as well. If you've got a load of advisors on it and you continue riding around on it, the advisory becomes a defect, you're riding around on a vehicle with a known defect. Again, potential hazards there, so, you know, do be mindful of that.
Yeah. I've now got a proper seat at last. James has gone home to cook dinner or something.
Cook dinner or some such. Some menial task or another.
Feed the children and all good things like that.
Yeah.
Right, next, I know you've had a recent scenario with a rear tyre on a bike.
Yes, yeah. Customer turned up with a Goldwing and he had fitted a car tyre to the rear. So, obviously, straight away we had to get on the manual and have a look because actually, to be perfectly honest, none of us had come across this before. So the manual categorically said that that was a no-no. So it is not fittable to a motorcycle.
Instant fail.
Instant fail. Inappropriate tyre fitted to vehicle or machine.
I think, touching on that subject very quickly, I think there's quite a few channels, YouTube channels in America where people have fitted car tyres to bikes, and obviously people in this country are probably getting that idea that the car tyre's probably half, quarter the price, and they're getting 10 times more mileage out of it, and they're giving it a go, and it's an instant fail.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand his reasons for doing it to a degree, mileage and, like you say, cost, but even when we bought it
dangerous.
You know, it's a car tyre, don't forget, is a square on the road. Motorcycles are not. Even when we brought it in and we had to sort of, you know, steer it a little bit, it tried to throw Mick on the floor. So, you know, from that point of view, it's a big no-no. You know, from a design point of view, they're not meant for motorcycles. And, you know, I know that there's a movement out there saying that it's great for big tourers and stuff. Okay, maybe in the States where you can sit at 55 miles an hour for 500 miles and not encounter a corner, great. But, you know, over here, it's a definite no-no from the DVSA's point of view, from a testing point of view, and frankly, it's pretty dangerous on our roads, I would imagine.
Agreed.
So that's that.
Totally agreed.
Don't do
right,
it.
tyre condition.
Tyre condition, okay, so what we're looking for when we inspect tyres is a couple of things. So condition and sidewall instruction. So we'll go with the sidewall instruction first because that's quite a big thing that a lot of people fall down on. First one being not for road use. We see that mainly on off-road machines, motocrossers, that sort of thing, where they've come straight off the track and they come for an MOT and, you know, they've still got the track tyres on. Other aspects of sidewall instruction include whether it's for front wheel use only or rear wheel use only, or in some cases rotational or direction instruction. So it might have an arrow on the sidewall somewhere with pointing the direction of rotation. Can depend on whether it's on the front or the back, but the sidewall instruction often makes that clear. Now I know there's been some stuff in the press recently about age of tyres, and some car presenters have had problems where their car's been failing for tyres being over 10 years old. That is only at the moment for class 5, I believe, which is minibuses. Certainly it's not been applied to motorcycles. However, an old tyre may come up as an issue in regards to obviously wear, but more along the lines of perishing, which can be a bit sneaky really, because you might have a bike and you may not look for it, and suddenly you take it for a test and the tester's having a good old prod and a poke because the sidewalls are starting to split. It's splitting in the tread between the grooves. I mean, most of the time when a tyre is perished, you'll get an advise, unless you can see the cords coming through, like you can separate it and you can see the cords or the structure of the tyre, in which case it's an immediate fail. Again, in terms of condition now, chunks missing out the sidewall that expose cords and stuff, that's an immediate fail. Any damage to a tyre, you're going to get an advise if the cords or the tyre structure are not immediately visible. Again, perishing, I will always advise any adverse conditioning on a tyre, because they're the only things that keep on the road. And with a motorcycle, you've only got two. With a car, you've got one in each corner. There's a bit more give there. Motorcycle,
your life is dependent on that, really. To be honest.
The majority of people that come through here have ridden their bike here, and they understand that, because who in their right mind would go out on a machine knowing that there's a fault that could potentially cost you a limb or your life? So anything along those lines we would sort of be looking at and inspecting, like I say, advising for any damage that doesn't show a cord or tyre structure, and then we take a lot of attention on sidewall instruction.
Right. While we're on wheels then, let's go for spokes.
Spokes, yeah, another good one. I mean, personally, again, when I'm testing, I'm going to get my hands in here and give them a squeeze and a pull and check for any ones that are loose or even sometimes not even attached. I mean, you might look at a spoke and think it's attached. You grab hold of it and it pops out.
I've seen many that are just broke.
Yeah, immediate fail, broke, corrosion, bent. I mean, as far as corrosion and bent spokes are concerned, they've got to be really corroded and really bent to warrant a fail. Again, a loose spoke that's got a bit of give in it, probably going to advise it. Personally, I don't think that represents that much of a risk. I mean, the wheel's not going to collapse with one or two loose spokes, but again, you'll definitely get an advise. Maybe even a bit of a conversation about it and a look at it. And if we're really feeling that excitable, we might put a small spanner on it or something and see if they'll tighten up.
I was about to say that. You're the sort of guy to go, that'll fit your spokes, give it a nipple.
Yeah. I mean, this is something we'll perhaps touch on later. I mean, certainly when I'm testing, and I know when James is testing and Mick, who also works here, if we can get your bike through with a bit of adjustment, we're going to do it, because as awful as it sounds, it's in my interest that you pass, because I don't want you to have to come back for a retest, because we don't charge for a retest. So, I'm working for free and not having a cup of tea, which, as we all know, is a no-no, really.
So it's nice to perhaps give it a nudge if it's going to get it through.
Yeah. We always try and help out where we can.
That's good to know.
Obviously, there are some things that are beyond help, but if we can, we will.
Right, let's move to the front and go for forks. What's classed as a fail with forks leaking or a missing of oil, and as on this bike it has shrouds, and as on some of the dirt bikes they'll have rubber gaiters.
Okay, so we'll look at gaiters and things like that. We are not allowed to remove any part of a bike that requires tools, like a spanner or a screwdriver. So if you've got gaiters on the front of it and it's affixed with, say, a Jubilee clip, I'm not going to undo it and move it. I'm not going to start trying to get under there and see what's under there, because I'm not being asked to, and it's not part of the test. And really, it's quite unnecessary.
So that really doesn't justify an advisory?
It depends on the tester. It really depends on the tester, because the advisory scheme is there to protect testers. Now, unfortunately, being an MOT tester, you are open to some litigation, criticism, sometimes
hatred,
outright hatred.
I'm sure you've experienced that.
You kind of got, as a tester, you've kind of got to look at every car or bike or whatever you're testing that comes in is the one that's going to cost you your license. So you've got to mitigate as much risk as possible. So, I mean, personally, I wouldn't advise a machine for having gaiters on unless I could see that there was some oil leakage. I might say gaiters fitted to front forks, obscuring some testable components. That gets me out of jail, it covers me, and it means that you as a presenter has got some information where I've said, look, I've seen that there's some oil coming out from under here, I think it's that, you want to do something about it. It's passing on the responsibility to the presenter. So, yeah, the advisories very much are a backside coverer. Some testers do get carried away with advisories. I myself, I'm a big fan of the advisory, so maybe I'm guilty of that. But I personally wouldn't advise gaiters. Now, front forks leaking, they've got to be gushing out. I mean, you've got to be seeing it dripping off the bottom of the fork onto the floor. You know, maybe the pads have got a bit on, you know, that sort of thing. Light misting or oil misting as a consequence of fork travel. So we might see an older bike that's not been used for a long time. I get on the front of it. As part of the test, I've got to do a bounce check. I might push those forks down farther than they've been for 10 years. In which case,
it'll leave a ring of oil.
Yeah, get a ring of oil. You've got to apply common sense to it. I mean, if it's pouring out and it's obvious, yeah, great, it's a fail. There's no sort of requirement in the manual or guide as to what you should consider to be a leak. You've just got to use your common sense. Personally, for me, again, like I say, if it's pouring out, I'll fail it. Anything leading up to that, I'm going to advise it. Light misting or whatever. I mean, if there's some negligible damping effect, so it's, you know, obvious that all the oil's come out of the forks and I get it and it just sinks straight to the floor, we're gonna have a conversation about it, and you know, there's likely to be a fail involved. But to be honest with you, if you've ridden to a testing station like that, you know, on your own head be it, to be perfectly honest.
Right, let's move up to the top of the front end, as in most bikes, Speedo.
At the moment in the testing manual, there's no requirement to have a Speedo or an odometer, you know, anything of that nature. So, you know, you've got to bear in mind that we might see a motocross coming here for a daytime MOT. It won't have any of that. So, you know.
But that, again, that could be different to road law.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, again, road usage regs.
It's completely different.
Could be completely different.
Totally
I don't know about
totally
that,
different.
you know.
Yeah. But it won't, if you bring a bike in with no Speedo, it can't fail.
No, that's right. And also, if there's no mileage shown, you'll just get on your certificate no mileage present.
Zero.
Yeah. Well, you won't even get a zero. You'll just say odometer not present or odometer obscured or some such. But again, like on a bike that's been built, this has got an odometer on it that's got real super low mileage on it. We know that's a genuine reason because we know looking at it, it's just been built. Yeah. If you're concerned about it, by all means have a chat with your tester. You know, make him aware of what's gone on with it. Because sometimes when we go to put the results in, it will show a mileage discrepancy. Say last year this bike might have had 25,000 miles on it. Between now and then it's had an odometer in it, it's now recording 200 miles. I will probably question the vehicle presenter, but you know, looking at it, I can probably quite happily say that it's had a Speedo in it recently, and that's why there's a mileage discrepancy. But you know, it is what it is, really.
Yeah. Have we touched on oil leaks? We haven't.
Oil leaks? No, we haven't.
Leaks. On cars and bikes, it's different, isn't it?
At the moment, for cars, there's an established piece of guidance, which is for cars running for 10 minutes or so, and leaves a 7.5 centimetre dollop of oil on the floor or more, then it's a fail. So it's a continuous leak, it poses a risk to other road users or the environment. Then that is quite easy to deal with and quite easy to fail. Motorcycles, at this point in time, there is no guidance for oil leaks. If it's pouring out, just don't bring it. Because the main reason being is you'll probably fall off it on the way here because it will coat the back tyre in it, and you know, and as well be aware of other road users. You know, we've all been round roundabouts outside petrol stations and almost fell off because someone's brimmed their tank and there's diesel gone everywhere or whatever.
I've been nearly caught out with that a few times.
Yeah. I mean, if a bike is presented, I mean, part of the car park checks is to determine whether it's safe to test. So if a bike pulls up and it's hosing oil out or fuel out, it's likely I'll decline to test, which is different to refusal to test, by the way. I'll probably say, look, you know, get that sorted out, then we can talk, then we can test. Yeah. If there's an element of oil around the bike, around the engine, and it's, you know, cumulative over years, you know, perhaps it's had a hard life, it's high mileage, or it's used every day, again, you might get an advisory saying engine oil leaks. Yeah, so there's no real guidance at this stage, but that could change.
Front end again, headstock bearings. Is it a fail if there's any movement whatsoever, or is there any sort of guide there?
No. There's no real guidance, but they use the term excessive wear quite a lot. It's, again, another ambiguous term that a tester has to be aware of, but also use your own experience and common sense. So we check headstock bearings both loaded and elevated, so you can check top and bottom bearings, because obviously depending on how it's loaded will reveal whether there's any play or not. There's got to be a lot. There's no guidance, but I think if you check your own headstock bearings and consider that you may not make it to where you're going, then it will fail. Yeah. It's really difficult to sort of quantify verbally. It's very much a case of I react to what I'm faced with. Yeah. Again, notchiness in headstock bearings, when the front wheel's up and I can feel like a 50p piece, I'm going to advise it. I'm going to have a chat with the vehicle presenter, because, you know, from riding a machine like that, you're going to potentially have problems with it diving and stuff when it gets past a notch. But there is provision in the testing manual to fail that. My personal experience is that I haven't failed an awful lot for it. I've advised plenty. I've advised plenty of bikes having play in headstock bearings, but to fail it, they've got to be really bad. So, you know, again, if they're that bad, you'll probably notice it when you're riding it.
Brakes. So obviously we've got modern bikes, disc brakes, really, really good. And then we've got things like this, drum brakes. What's the criteria there?
Right, well, the criteria at the moment is that one wheel has got to achieve 30% efficiency and one's got to achieve 25% at the moment at this stage. So efficiency is calculated by force, so the result on the roller brake tester, divided by weight times by 100. So weight is weight of the machine and weight of rider. That will give you a efficiency percentage per wheel. Now, at the moment, the VTS calculates it, so that calculation, I mean, I had to go and look that up because I haven't made it for a long time, and maths isn't my particularly strong forte. So the VTS computer will always calculate what it needs to be, and it knows what the requirements are for the year of the bike. So, like I say, it's not really about the year of the bike, actually. It's actually about, you know, overall efficiency based on the weight of the machine. So you could have a little tiny thing that doesn't weigh anything, and you won't expect to see very good brakes on it. But they are good enough for that machine because it's relative to the weight. Older bikes, again, it is what it is. You know, technology's moved on. You can't expect something, even something like this, which is a relatively new bike, I suppose.
But
it
it's
will not
old
perform,
technology.
No, and it won't perform the same as that Yamaha over there that's got disc brakes all around. So, again, you need to go at it with the understanding of what you're testing. So as a tester, you need to not necessarily be sympathetic, but you need to understand the technologies that are involved and the differences. So, for example, the brake lever on this has quite a lot of travel. It's cable. You know, you will expect a certain amount of travel. There's a mechanical arm down here that's got to move. There's shoes that's got to come out. So you need to understand that you're going to feel a bit of travel on that brake. Now, if you get in an 18-plate BMW, you're not going to feel much give because it's hydraulic, it's got ABS, you know, there's a lot of tech involved. The other aspect of brakes on bikes that we look for, in addition to efficiency, we're looking for things like, do they grab? Now, drum brakes can be a bit susceptible to this because they can sometimes build up with dust. And it can cover the shoes up, it reduces the distance between the friction surface and the drum, and you tap that brake and suddenly it ratchets on. You know, and there's a certain amount of self-servoing in the back because the way the shoes move. And, you know, if you think that that's going to lock up on the road, then, you know, you can fail it for that, for grabbing.
These, especially the rears on these, can be bad for that.
Yeah.
But again, like you're saying, you take the scenario, the bite, and consider that.
You've got to use your understanding of the testing scheme combined with what's in front of you and your knowledge and your experience. So I'm lucky enough to be, you know, of an age where I have experienced vehicles with drum brakes all round, no servo assist, and modern vehicles. You know, they feature both quite heavily in my life. So I'm able to switch between the two. I understand how this works. Other things with brakes on drums, you know, when the drum goes oval, you might get a fluctuation. Again, for me, there is some guidance in the manual, but I tend to use my own judgment if it's...
That can be also down to an error in wheel building.
Yeah.
People can overdo the spokes and deform the drum.
Now, if I'm particularly concerned about a fluctuation that's shown up on the roller brake tester, I might run it up the yard and put the brake on. And if I feel that it's going to throw me off in, you know, normal usage, or if the roads are greasy, I might look at it a bit more deeply.
I guess you're well within your rights to actually drive or ride a vehicle if you really want to
road
confirm
test
a problem.
Yeah, road testing a machine isn't part of the test, but if I feel that it helps me reach the right decision, then I might. But I'm not going to take it on the road. I'm not going to take someone's motorbike on the road because the risks are far too great. I mean, where we are, we've got a yard out there. There's enough room out there for me to see what's going on with suspension components or brake components to help me make a decision. If I think it's going to help me make the right decision, I'm definitely going to do it. It's a very rare occurrence. You know, it doesn't happen. If I'm unsure, one of the rules of thumb for MOT testing is if you're looking at something and you've got the information and you're unsure about where you're going to go, pass and advise. So, you know, if I'm unsure about if a brake's fluctuating and I'm umming and ahhing about it, definitely it's going to get advised because I can't make a firm decision one way or another, but I've advised it, I've covered myself, the vehicle presenter is aware, we've had a chat, great.
Next, I've seen it a few times where people have asked, have you got the right to view the MOT, to watch the tester test the bike or the car or whatever, and your rights to question your decision.
Yeah, I mean, so viewing area, we'll go there first. Some testing stations may not have a viewing area in the workshop, they may have a room that's got a TV on it, that's their viewing area. If they don't want you in the workshop, that is their right. However, I would strongly urge you to ask for the right to be in the room at least where your bike's being tested. If they say no, maybe think about going elsewhere. Depends what your relationship is with the business in question. Now, for us personally, our viewing area is within the workshop area. Customers are absolutely more than welcome to wait there. And to be perfectly honest,
that's why I always get in the way.
Yeah. You know, get in the way. You know, get involved because.
Where's my tea?
Especially what's critical with motorbike testing is if there's a garage that's doing MOTs on motorcycles, then somewhere in that business is a biker. And you can probably guarantee he's on the tools somewhere and he will love to have a chat with you about your motorcycle. And most motorcycle MOT testers love a chat. Now, I would much rather have a stand around gas bagging and looking at motorbikes and drinking tea than doing any actual work. So, you know, it's your absolute right to come in with your vehicle and ask to come in and be, you know, witness to testing it. And the garage may not want you to because they do obviously have health and safety requirements. You don't want to get run over. For us personally, we want the customer in because we can have a chat, and as well, it helps us understand the controls of the bike. If it's a bit different, if there's, you know, where's the horn? You know, how do I get it on main beam? How do I start it? You know, it's really helpful if you're there as a presenter to help the tester get, you know, where he needs to be easily without any hassle. Now, the other important thing about MOT testing, or certainly presenting a bike for test or a vehicle for test, is that you do have a right to question the tester's decision. Now, formally, you can ask for an appeals form. If you've got a fail on your bike and you think he's absolutely made a mistake, you can request an appeal form. He has to give it to you. There are certain complications involved with that. You've got to get onto the DVSA, it takes ages, you can't use it, you've got to pay for the test fee, etc., etc. But before it gets to that point, you can absolutely question the tester because, you know, from a testing point of view, it is impossible for us to retain the amount of information in that manual up here, plus combine the fact that that manual is a live document. It changes all the time. You know, what we as testers have to do, we have to make sure we're aware of the major changes and have a broad overview of what's going on. So
that's probably where, you know, if you bring in something like this to an MOT, the rules are available online.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you, let's say for instance, the side mount number plate, if you think there may be an issue with that, go online, look at the rules yourself, perhaps print them off, and then if your tester pulls you up on that, questions it or fails it or advises it, you have got that part of the rule book to hand, and you can sort of question him and pull him up on that, maybe.
All the documents that I have access to, you have access to. They're now out there on the government websites. You can trawl through it. The tester's manual and the testing guide is in there. Now, they're very dreary. Let me warn you of this. They are super boring. But there's a lot of great information in there. And if you're unsure, then have a look. Arm yourself with the information so that you know what to expect. Yeah. And any tester worth his salt. Now, I've had this before where I've gone to a machine, a bike, or a car, and I've gone, yeah, that's a fail. And actually, it's not. It's turned out not to be. I've either forgotten something or I've not read the manual properly. And part of being a good tester is being able to say, yeah, I got that wrong, sorry. You know, stand up and own your mistakes. And it does happen. None of us are perfect. You know, anyone who says they're perfect is just a liar. Yeah. So, you know, you are well within your rights to question a decision, have a chat with the tester, and, you know, between you, if the tester's a good guy, you shouldn't have any problems. However, it is worth pointing out that most testers have a very delicate ego. They're quite precious, they can be a bit highly strung, and that little bit of power for a lot of people, they're going to wave it around. So, you know, you're not always going to get the right response. Hopefully you do. I like to think that, you know, when I'm testing a bike, I will always listen to what, you know, I'm being told or asked or, you know, anything like that comes up. However, there will always be a point, if I'm right and I know I'm right and I can support it through evidence, then that's the end of it. But, you know, we can always have a conversation.
Yeah, you're more than willing to
I mean,
work with the customer.
It's in my, like I've said before, it's in my interest for this machine to go out with a pass on it, a great test, the customer's had a good experience because they're going to come back, going to recommend it, it's good for my business. And, you know, realistically, it means I've done my job right, which is great. I mean, if sometimes they do fail, they've got to fail, that's just the way of it. But, you know, I can't help that.
Right, I've got another question, because you often see it with people with bikes, especially custom bikes and things like that. The horn, I see some people fit bulb horns or sirens and things like that. What's the criteria there then?
So the criteria, certainly regarding bulb horns, is 1st of August 1973, you can have a bulb horn if you want. After that, it's got to be an audible warning that isn't harsh or grating. It's got to be able to produce a monotone, constant monotone. Thank you. And so, no dual horns, no air horns, no blowing Dixie, anything like that. And by audible, what we're looking for there really is, am I, as a car driver, sat in traffic, my windows up, going to be alerted to your presence coming alongside me or behind me or around a roundabout? If the answer's no, it's probably going to fail. So if it's super quiet, or if it's got water in it and it's sort of a feeble little chirp, you know, it's probably not going to pass. You know, you need to be, again, you need to be kind of aware of road safety, your own road safety, and are you able to alert other road users to your presence?
And that doesn't mean like you see some guys in videos that will come up alongside a car and think their horn's the rev limiter. I've never understood that.
No,
surely he's got a horn. He just doesn't need to rev his bike up.
It's a scene thing, I think, more than anything. So, you know, we're not interested in that for MOT. We need to have an audible warning. It's got to be loud. I've got to be able to think I can hear it, you know, on the street, in the car, on a push bike. But like I say, if you really want to have a bulb horn, you can have one. Pre-1st of August 1973, submit it for test and it will pass.
Yeah. Again, make sure you've got a proper horn on at point of test.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the basic things we see a lot of, because often a lot of horns are mounted down the bottom there or something, you know, they fill it with water, a lot of water ingress, dirt and filth. Yeah. Or, you know, people just don't use them. So when we get to it, it doesn't work or it sounds feeble. You know, it's a real simple thing to fail on, you know, and we don't keep horns here. We can't sell you one, we can't fit you one. We will try and get it working, we'll hit it with a screwdriver, we'll clean up the contacts, but, you know, for an obvious thing to check at home, it seems silly to not be prepared, come to a testing station and your bike fail just because the horn's
Again, I think when you're bringing your bike, is make it look presentable, I think.
Oh yeah.
You know, don't turn up on something that looks like you just dragged it out of the scrapyard.
Yeah.
Presentation, again,
obviously that's got to help, surely.
The letter of the law, as far as that's concerned, is if it's too dirty to test, so I can't see stuff. Say if you've just come back from the motocross track and it's caked, and I can't see the lights, I can't see the chain, I can't see the carburetor, you know, I can't check things that might be leaking because of it, then I'm probably going to decline to test it or even refuse to test it. So, you know, and you know, it is worth mentioning, if your bike is dirty, that in itself isn't a reason for me to start looking for faults, because I'm going to apply the test as best I can anyway. But, you know, just grease the wheels a little bit, help your tester out a little bit, make sure that it's ready to go, it's clean, it's presentable, it's not doing anything unusual that you're not expecting it to. And for goodness sake as well, one of the biggest things is, I think we touched on it previously, is if there are odd controls or it does odd things and you need to tell the tester, then tell him, help him out, you know, because...
Yeah, which you welcome here.
Oh yeah, definitely.
You welcome a guy out.
You know, we're not, like I say, we're not in it to fail it, we have no interest in failing it, we just want to apply the test fairly and appropriately. But at the same time, I want to be able to get on it, start it, ride it in easily. I want to know where all the lights are, where the switches are and stuff. You know, so a lot of these custom bikes, you know, even silly things like, you know, the ignition barrel might be hidden around here somewhere.
Some people put hidden switches on them as well.
Yeah, you know, or it's got an immobiliser on it that you've not told me about.
So you don't want to be sat here trying to figure all that out when he's popped off at the shop.
You know, and as well, like if you're sat in the waiting room, you can hear your alarm going off and it's been going off for 5 minutes. Get yourself out there, help them disarm it. You know, it just makes the whole thing easier and smoother. And you know, like I said earlier, you know, testers have got a bit of a fragile ego. Not all, but some certainly have. It just helps. You know, be prepared.
Yeah. Another thing that springs to mind, and I've had this myself in the past, where you've built a bike, obviously. I like a lovely finish on the frame, so I do ask my powder coater to push it as far as he can get. And sometimes that can sort of bury your frame numbers. So how does that leave you?
Well, I mean, we touched earlier on bringing documentation to help us identify it. What we really mean by that is after we've got information off the bike and we are registering it for tests. So the paperwork helps us build a profile of that bike online so it's right first time. However, I am not allowed to take vehicle identity details solely from the V5. It has to be on the machine, it has to be legible, and I've got to be able to read it. So having the V5 there just helps us. So if we look in, it's a bit, especially on an older bike, is that a Z or is it a 7? Well, I can see on the V5 it's a Z. I look a bit closer, I've used the 2 to gather the information, I've made the right decision, I've got the right result. If you've got no V5 and you've turned up with your freshly powder coated frame and the powder coat is filled in the VIN, I'm not going to be able to test it, I can't identify it. Now, that will seem annoying and potentially a bit, harsh of a tester, but in order to make sure that we get the identity of the machine right first time, we get the information down right first time, and that your bike has got the right history attached to it as a consequence of what we've done, we want to be 100% sure it's right. Plus, a missing VIN, you just can't test with it. It just makes the whole endeavour fairly pointless. So make sure it's there. If it's an older bike and you look at the headstock and it's a bit rusty, try and clean it off a bit, perhaps run a wire brush over it, make it so it's legible. Or if you know for a fact that you've had a custom plate made, but you've hidden it, tell the tester where it is, help him out. If you know for a while that there's a panel like Vespers and stuff like that, you've got to take half the bike apart to get to the identification numbers. If that is the case, that to be the case, get out there, help your tester. And as well, he's going to be grateful if you've got a lovely bike with a lovely finish on it and that tester's got a panel in his hand, take it off him, hold on to it, because if he drops it, he's got to pay for it if you drop it.
This is what you're saying, you welcome people on the shop floor to sort of help with their bike, guide you on anything that could be weird about it.
We've found over the years with testing and stuff, and it's cars as well, having the customer out helps us because it means that we can demonstrate that we're hopefully decent enough blokes and we're up for a chat and we're quite amenable and approachable, and it makes the experience that the presenter has enjoyable or worth it, because often a lot of these bikes, as we did talk a minute off camera, about how bikes nowadays, they're very much in the leisure sort of side of life. You don't get many guys come through anymore who ride, you know, it's their sole form of transport. They're on it every day.
Yeah.
They're often
It's a
hobbies, you know, and as part of a hobby, you know, guys often want to come in, they want to be around it, they want to feel they've been included in the process.
Yeah.
You know, and as a consequence, you know, it can be rewarding for the vehicle presenter and for the tester, to be honest, because like I say, you know, we're stuck in this metal box for 10 hours a day. It's kind of nice to see and meet new people. And, you know, it helps us from a business point of view, it helps the presenter, so yeah, get stuck in, get involved, you know. Always ask beforehand that the tester's okay with it, but any bike tester who's worth his salt really, you know, should be pretty welcoming and pretty happy to do that.
Right, we're covering quite a bit, I think. I've definitely got one more. Chains, condition of chains, split links, and stuff like that. I've had bikes where I've bought bikes and discovered the split link's actually the wrong way.
Yeah, so the split link, if it's the wrong way around, that is a fail. That's clear in the manual, there's guidance, you know, we will look for it, we'll have the back wheel lifted up, I will spin the wheel slowly and I will check all the links as they go past. Yeah. You know, chain lubrication, if it's under lubricated and dry, I mean, it's got to be really bad to cause an issue where I'm going to really look in the manual and have a look. You know, if links aren't moving, it's clearly not going around the sprocket smoothly, then I'm going to look at the manual and I'm going to be looking at trying to find a way of either seeing where I am with a fail or, you know, an advise, or certainly, you know, getting to grips with that. But again, it's unlikely that a bike person will have ridden a bike here with it like that, because it'll be horrible on the road.
You'll be surprised.
Yeah, I've just, as I was saying that, I thought, what I'm even saying.
Yeah, you'll be surprised.
Yeah, and chain tension, that's a big one. So obviously with this machine here, there's a lot of distance between the front sprocket, rear sprocket, but this chain, that feels nice. It's clearly well adjusted. It's a new chain. It's not flying off.
Yeah.
There's no specific guidance in the manual at the moment with regards to how much give on a chain you can have before it's a fail. It's very much a case of look at it, use your own experience and common sense.
Yeah.
If when it's sat down and I get the back sprocket in the chain and I lift it and I think I can pull it off the sprocket just by, you know, manipulation at the back, it's too loose. Yeah. Now some machines come with tension guidance somewhere on the frame. Now obviously I'm going to look at that. If it's there and I'm going to look at it, there's, you know, information from the manufacturer is great, and I will check it. If it's within tolerance, it's not going to fail. Even if it's a bit out of tolerance from the manufacturer, I may still think it's all right and only advise it. Sprocket wear, so we do see this sometimes, not that often to be honest, but the wear on the tooth at the back, again, it has got to be severe to fail an MOT. I mean, I've got to think that the chain's going to fly off at any moment, or something's going to break, or you know something. It's got to be to a point where I feel that there's a real risk of a calamity happening. Up to that point, I will probably advise it. We're also talking about inspecting the sprocket. Some of them have got a cush drive in there. They can be susceptible to wearing excessively. Obviously this one has, and it's solid, I presume that's right, isn't it?
No, it has got rubber.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, sort of.
See, there we go, look, case in point, you know, I stand corrected. So I will probably physically get hold of the sprocket and move it and check it, see if there's any movement, both, you know, backwards and forwards and top to bottom, as it were. But again, it's got to be super bad and excessive to warrant a fail. Now, while we're in this area, one thing I will talk about is
nuts.
Yeah, castellated nuts and split pins, locking devices. If it's got a hole in the spindle and there's a castellated nut on it, it will need a split pin. Put one in. You know, you might be able to say, well, it's got a lock washer behind it. It doesn't. You're splitting hairs, really. If there's no split pin in it, I'm probably going to fail it. I mean, we will probably have a discussion regarding what's behind it, whether it's a lock washer or not, and if we're both happy, okay. But if it's got a hole in it and it's a castellated nut, put a split pin in it. If you've inadvertently undone the castellated nut and you've left the split pin in and it's still in the spindle, put a nylock on it. You know, it is doable, there's ways around it, but you know, any locking devices like that, make sure they're in there. Again, for the chain tensioning bolt, they've often got a lock nut on them, like a 10mm in there. Make sure it's got one, make sure it's tight. Good to go. But I mean, again, we keep a stock of split pins. You know, we keep a stock of metric and imperial nylocks, nuts. So if we find one's missing, the likelihood is I'll pop a split pin, I won't even charge you for it. because you know, it's, again, I want it to pass, I want the right result.
Right, I think we're about coming to the end. We've covered quite a bit. I will say, if there's anything I haven't gone through, I'm in here all the time with all the bikes I do, and if I've missed anything, I'll pop the question again. But one of the things, as we were saying earlier about customer involvement here on the shop floor, which you welcome, is, I'll get MOT time for some people, they get worried about it. And obviously, a lot of our bikes are our pride and joy, and you may worry about how it's getting handled. You welcome people onto the shop floor to help with that. Certain people don't even want the bottom of their frame scratching. So, you know, you're very careful where you handle them, and you will allow the customer to help. If you've got to get that bike in the air, you'll welcome
absolutely.
the help.
Part of the test is that I do need to have an assistant. Now, quite often I'll have one of my colleagues do it, but as the vehicle presenter, then you can ask to assist. So a great one is, at some point I've got to lift it up. Now, modern bikes, this sort of setup here, swinging arm, lift it up, great. Now on something like this, that's perhaps not going to be appropriate. So I'm going to need to lift it up, probably with a trolley jack. Now, if that's the case, then quite often, if something like this, I'll ask the customer, I'm going to lift it with a trolley jack, is there any considerations I need to be aware of? Now, quite often, it's please don't scratch my frame, or, you know, and don't jack it there because I'm not sure if it's going to be strong enough. Anything like that, then make it known. Even if you've got your own little velvet covered jacking block, bring it, I'll use it. It doesn't matter to me. I want to make sure you go out of here happy. Now, we will have to lift him up. Some places like swinging him on the side stand. I personally, that makes me very nervous because you don't know what it's going to do. Also, a lot of modern side stands on crosses and stuff can be aluminium. You break it, you know, you're in a world of trouble. So if you've got any concerns about that sort of thing, then get yourself into the workshop, have a word with them. Also, when you come to book it in, have a word with the person who's booking you in and say, look, I've got these concerns. It might be about jacking it. It might be about your lights or your exhaust. Let the person know who's booking it, know that you've got these concerns, and then when the tester is faced with your questions, it's not a total surprise. And in fact, you know, we would certainly allocate more time to it.
Give you time to prepare.
To prepare for it as well, because, you know, like I said earlier, it's impossible for me to retain all the information in those manuals in here. And in fact, the DVSA encourage us not to. They want us to use the manual as a reference point. We've got to use it daily. We want to make sure we're doing it right. So, you know, as much preparation as possible from my point of view, is going to be welcomed. And if you've got any special requirements with it, you know, it may be that it's just a show bike, that it never goes on the road. So it may be that you want to bring it and you want to, when we finish with it, don't leave it outside. You know, please can you leave it in here? If you ask us, we'll do it. You know, to be honest with you, if it's pouring with rain and we see something like this, then we're going to leave it inside anyway. Especially if it's turned up in the back of a truck, then, you know, I'm not going to just stick it outside and let it get soaked because, you know, it doesn't look very good, and, you know, it will upset the presenter, and no one wants that. So, yeah, you know, as far as lifting it up, like I say, we're probably going to use a trolley jack on something like this. We're pretty good in terms of common sense. I know what will take a trolley jack, I know what won't, and I'm certainly not going to go damaging your bike or take a risk which may result in damage, because that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is, like I said earlier, is to get the test done, get it done right, and get you out of here with the right result. But, you know, we do have to lift them up. We've got to check ball bearings. We've got to check, you know, headstock bearings and all that sort of stuff. And that's about it.
I think we've pretty much covered quite a bit, if not all.
The problem with doing this sort of video is, and we discuss this quite a lot, is there's going to be some stuff that is difficult to be very specific on because it requires a certain amount of experience and an understanding of the manual that isn't necessarily something you can put into words. And there's a lot in the manual, legislation and requirements, that frankly would just make a super boring video. So, you know, if you feel that we've missed anything or not gone into something in depth, then you're right. But I'm sure if you ask the question, then we can revisit and go back.
I'm in all the time. With all my bikes come here, so if we've missed something today, I'll cover it briefly in another video. So yeah, I think we've about covered everything, really.
We're somewhere near. A lot of talking.
Yeah, definitely. So there you go. Hopefully it's give you a bit of an idea and a bit of an heads up before you take your bike for an MOT.
and hopefully it'll help. And like I say, if you're in this area, this is Lutterworth MOT Centre, so if you're in Coventry, Nuneaton, Leicester, anywhere around here, maybe give these guys a try.
Give us a call, pop in. Kettle's always on.
I'll certainly recommend them, definitely. Anyway, I think that'll do. Cheers for watching, guys. Take care.